Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katrina and this is I'm going to do Gems, Books, Reading and Stuff's D tag, and I'm just gonna get right into it. The first prompt is D is for Dahl. What is your favorite book by Roald Dahl? I've never read one of his books, but I have kind of adjacent because the kids, my older kids, did there was BFG like project at the school. So the kids read the book and they did all these projects, and there was this huge 2-story BFG. You know, they built an entire giant in like the school atrium. And so I helped them with their assignments and things like that. So I know a little bit about that story just because of that, but I've never read any of his books. D is for Doctor Who. What is your favorite book about time travel or your favorite Doctor Who? My favorite books about time travel would be Outlander and the Chronicles of St. Mary's series. I've talked about those 100 times on this channel. And my favorite Doctor was David Tennant. He was everything. I went ahead and watched Matt Smith's seasons, but that was the end. Like, I really didn't have as much heart for the show once David Tennant was gone. The next prompt is D is for Dark. What is the darkest book you have read? And recently I would say The Bluest Eye or Reimagining Incarceration. The Bluest Eye deals with things like child rape, racism, poverty. I mean, just everything that could happen to one person happened, and it's terrible. Multiple times I cried while watching that, while reading that book, and had to have multiple buffer books before and after. And Reimagining Incarceration is like a real life horror story for me. I remember physically getting chills at one of the stories about how there are 13 states here in the United States that will try children, and children as young as 8 have been put behind bars in adult prisons. And I have an 8-year-old little boy, and the idea of him, I mean, it's horrific to be in an American jail as a grown person. They come out, you know, having been molested or having been turned even more into crime, or stripped of their right to vote, like stripped of any ability to sometimes make a better life because nobody wants to hire a felon or blah blah blah. But could you imagine a baby, you know, being like, I see my 8-year-old as a baby, and the idea of him being behind bars is just unconscionable to me, and it gave me chills, and I had to put it down. And the more you read about women being put into jail for life because they were carrying a small amount of drugs for their boyfriend, or because they were defending themselves against an abuser, and they go to jail pregnant and they are giving birth, you know, chained to a bed. And you know, I've given birth 5 times, and I had to move and walk around and, you know, have the freedom. I had to get my back rubbed during the labor, and it's like the indignity of that, and then to have your baby just taken from you. So those are, like, I read horror books to relax from the kind of reality books that you know, the horrible dark reality books that I read. The next prompt is D is for Dickens. How many Dickens novels have you read? I haven't read any Dickens novels. You know, there's this conversation going on Twitter. I was, you know, reading the thread, the back and forth, and a lot of people are starting to wonder, you know, is it important for us to read, you know, like some of these classic books that we were forced to read in high school, and especially for people of color, when we have our own classics that have been neglected, we didn't get to read, and there's so much that really pertains to our lives now. And a lot of that stuff may have been, you know, it was considered extraordinary, but when people are kind of reevaluating it, they're like, this is not really extraordinary. And so I'm wondering if I'm even going to make myself read the classics. Like, I don't have any desire to read Dickens. And so, I think about that a lot. Like, and I've been saying, this whole year I'm going to read Anna Karenina. I don't know if I'm going to push myself to necessarily read Western classics as much anymore, unless it's something I really am interested in, just to be seen as cultured or whatever, when what's been considered culture will be a lot of times mediocre and just put above other people just because of who's been at the top of the hierarchy for the last however many, hundreds of years. And so, yeah, I don't feel the need to read Dickens. The next prompt is D is for dictionary. In the internet years, do you still use a physical paper dictionary? No, I do not. And I love that anytime I have a question, I can just ask, Alexa, or I can ask Alexa, stop, or I can ask Google and just get my answer right away. So I love that. All right. D is for Dagger and Detective. What is the last detective novel you read? This is a weird one, this book that I read, and it's called The Haunting of Tram 015, of Tramcar 015 by P. Shelley Clark. It was a novella, and it ends up being this tram, this like over the city tram was haunted by what ends up being, these people have to figure out what's going on with it. They know it's haunted, but they don't know what it is. So these special investigators have to come and figure it out. And there's a side story that's going on with it, but I just thought that was it's just an interesting, different kind of story. It takes place in this reimagined Cairo, this whole world. It's called the Dead Gin series, and there's 3 short stories, and 2 short stories and a novella, and then there's a novel now. And so I've read the short stories and a novella, and there's all these, it's like steampunk, and at the same time it seems like it's like 1920s Egypt, and there's Sudanese people, there's Egyptian people, there's some English people, and it's supernatural. So there's other beings, there's jinns and mechanical angels. It's very interesting. And so that was the last detective story that I read. D is for Dostoevsky. What is your favorite Dostoevsky novel? I have not read Dostoevsky. D is for diversity. What book from your reading ticked the most diversity boxes? And I think recently that would be Felix Ever After. It was a young adult book about a trans boy who I believe he's Hispanic. The boy he's in love with, I think, was black. His friends are all, it takes place in New York, so there's all the colors. There's gay kids, bi kids, straight kids, black and white kids. And like I said, all the sexualities you could think of. And even Felix himself wasn't quite sure that he was only trans and gay. And he said, I think he settles more as being demi toward the end. So, and then he goes to a LGBTQIA group therapy session, and so there's even more. There's older couples. There's an older gay couple, and I think they were white. There was some drag people and all that kind of stuff. So D is for drawing. Who is your favorite visual artist? It's funny, if you look at my art board on Pinterest, you can tell what stage I'm going through at any point in time, because I'll find somebody and then just look for everything that they put out, and I'll I'll pin it to that board. And right now I'm going through a Pierre Rutz. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Sometimes the R-U-T-Z, the U has an umlaut on top of it, and so I'm not sure how to say it. So Pierre Rutz, I'll put up some of his pictures over here. I'm obsessed, and I want some of them. I don't know where I put them, but I want some prints, some poster prints of these. And that was the D tag. Again, I tag anyone who wants to do this tag. Oh, and I wanted to, he said, if you didn't have answers for Dickens, Dostoevsky, or Dahl, I wanted to give some other D names, and that would be Davis, Angela Davis, Our Prison's Obsolete. That's a very good, beginning book when when it comes to talking about what's going wrong with American prison systems. And Tananarive Due, especially with spooky season coming up. She's an African-American horror writer, and the two books that I have read that I enjoyed by her were The Good House and My Soul to Keep. So those are two authors that last names end with D. So use this emoji for the end of this video's emoji. Otherwise, answer some of the questions down in the comment box that I have posed to you. Be easy on yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.